Welcome to ADHD Power Tools, where we give you the tools to unlock the power within. Hello, Brooke. Today I want to talk to you about ADHD and employment. I want to ask you, what are some tools you can give us on employment and ADHD?
So employment and ADHD, I like to give some background information for our listeners before jumping into the tools. So as an entrepreneur with ADHD, you'll find out there that there's a lot more entrepreneurs who have ADHD. So in fact, some studies show that 300% of people with ADHD are more likely to be entrepreneurs than employees. So just sit with that fact for a second, which might tell you where I'm going with this. Also, some studies show that only 50% of adults with ADHD were able to hold down a full-time job, where 72% of people who don't have ADHD were able to do that. So that was a national survey. But people with ADHD who are employers and love their jobs, there's many tools out there that can help you keep down the job that you love. So if you're in a job where you love your colleagues, you love your boss, you love what you do, but just need more support, there's a few different options that you can try out. One is scheduling. Make sure to use a planner. We've talked about that before, just on a day-to-day basis, but keeping track of your appointments, keeping track of your to-dos, figuring out a system that works for you, whether it be electronically or paper. So if you're on the move in your job, you might need to put it into your phone so you can use your phone to keep track of things. But if you're not and you're sitting at a desk and you're a visual person, a paper planner might be something that you can utilize on a daily basis or on a weekly view of what you have coming up to keep on track. Another thing is, very often we can get into hyper focus mode when we are really focused on a project, an activity. But if you have a job that requires multiple projects, multiple tasks, implementing those natural break times to make sure that you're keeping on track with how long it's projected to take. So scheduling in breaks, making sure that you are meeting your optimal focus time, which is 10 to 40 minutes for most people, and getting up, moving around, drinking some water, taking deep breaths to get back into your focus. Also, you might want to buddy up. If you trust your colleagues and you have good friends at work, have each other hold yourselves accountable. So if you have a project, you have a task, check in with each other so you can help each other stay on point with whatever it is that you're doing. Another thing is, maybe both of you can be doing the projects in the same room quietly. So this way it can help you, kind of like a body double, stay focused on whatever the task is. Or you could Zoom, just like we do in our coaching.
Exactly.
Sorry. I know you're dying to talk, so I have a few more things. Some other things, get a coach to help you figure out what it is that you need help with and what your strengths are and what your weaknesses in the job are. Perhaps you need to delegate some tasks that are not your strengths or are sucking your energy. Perhaps you need to break it down a little bit more. Perhaps your optimal focus time is not 4 p.m. at the end of the day. You need to get things done earlier in the day. Maybe you need to implement some exercise. So those types of things. And last but not least, if you love everything about your job, but you're just struggling with all these interventions, you might be able to qualify for the individual accommodation. Excuse me. I just want to make sure I say this right. The Americans with Disabilities Act, which was created in 1990 for people with disabilities. So not everyone with ADHD qualifies for that, but if you feel comfortable in your role, you want to stay there, and you are just at wit's end and you're not really sure what else to do, you can contact an employment lawyer and find out from them if you qualify for that, but also learn what possible ramifications might come from qualifying for it and what all of your options are before just asking for it. So make sure to contact an employment lawyer and get the full scope of the picture before claiming that you want that from your boss.
100%. No, I agree 100%. You make a lot of interesting and very good points. A lot of great tools. When I think employment, I think I'm 22 years old. I'm a college student, almost graduating, but I still am a college student. And I think in terms of my age, teenage years, college student, I've had two jobs total in my life. It was I started at a restaurant, had three positions there as a busboy. Then I started doing delivery over the phone on to-goes, and eventually became a server. Now, the transition from busboy to to-goes was a wake-up call. I don't know if I've ever shared this with you,
Mm.
but I originally got fired from my job as a busboy at the restaurant I used to work at. This was back when I was 18 years old. I got the job at 17, and about 8 months later, I got fired. And this was because my punctuality was very off. I always got distracted and would go out back in the restaurant and goof around, not really do my job that I was supposed to do. I ended up hiring my best friend, and that was a big mistake as well. We would get distracted, not do our job. We didn't make it our priority. Didn't really take it too seriously. We were young, and punctuality was off, and I wasn't doing the job I needed to do efficiently. As a busboy, you're juggling lots of things. There's so many different tasks you gotta do, whether it's opening work, closing work, and mid shift work. And I wasn't on top of it, and I got fired. But at that time, I realized it was a wake up call. I talked to my boss and I said, "Listen, I'm sticking around for a while." I gave her, I let her know that you can trust me. I can do better. And thankfully, she told me, "Okay, you should try to goes. I think you'd be good for that." Talking to people more and more, social, interactive work, more hands-on with the customers, and it was a wake-up call. That's when I was like, okay, I need to figure this out, and that's when I incorporated things like a pocket notebook or the server booklet. I
Mm-hmm.
started writing down things that I needed to do.
Yeah.
To-do list. Okay, someone asked for an extra side of this, someone did that. This is my opening work, this is my closing side work. I wrote it all down and took so many pictures and notes, and I tried to optimize my new position as much as I could.
Yeah.
And thankfully, I ended up getting promoted again to server, and I really realized, I'm type of a hands-on, I get bored quick type of person. I've said this multiple times,
Right.
and especially in the restaurant environment, there's so many things going at once, whether it's in person or even at home, working at home. There's so many things you got to manage and
Mm-hmm.
organize
Mm-hmm.
in employment. And me with ADHD, I got to make sure everything is put together. There's a whole structure, a whole plan. Especially as a college student, you have school. You want to make sure, like for example, I'm also shadowing, I'm also interning, I'm doing multiple other things, school. So you don't want to stack too much. You want to know when you introduce something new, a new priority, that you maybe take something off instead.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you don't want to overload yourself, especially me with ADHD. There's too much. Sometimes I'm like, it's kind of like there's too much going on. I get a little too
Right.
excited. So you
And when
want
you
to,
do too much,
yeah,
then you aren't giving 100% in each area.
100%. So I always try to see, my do I have enough priorities? Do I have too many priorities? Do I have too little priorities? And what are my priorities? And I always try to focus on that. And even now with my new job as an EMT, same thing. I have a pocket notebook. I have my little booklet in my pocket, make sure everything's on top of everything. I study my position as much as I can, the protocol I got to do, and I go from there. And you bring up a really good point as well, Brooke, the accountability thing. Accountability is really key. Working around people helps me a lot. People keeping me accountable of what I do, deadlines, due dates, are you doing your job correctly, and even at home over Zoom, set up meetings. It goes kind of the same with my classes, with my job. Having that accountability is really important for me.
Sure. I know a lot of us dread meetings when they're unnecessary, but the necessary ones, the accountability meetings, are super helpful.
Mhm.
And I love what you said about learning style too. So you are a hands-on kinesthetic learner, but you also are a visual learner because writing in the notepad jogs your memory, but you're seeing it. So knowing your learning style, knowing your strengths, and making sure that you are working in that and you have that potential in your role. And there are a lot of ADHDers that jump from job to job until they figure out what it is that are their strengths, and also, are they might be in the right job, they might have all the right strengths, but they might not be in the right environment. They might not be in the right organization. They may not have the right boss. So you might find the perfect job for you, but then you also have to evaluate, are you someone who prefers a smaller work environment or a larger organization, which is more formal? So those are other things that to consider when you're
Yeah.
working.
Yeah, I mean, going from being a busboy to goes and serving, working with the customers, I realized that this fits perfectly for me. I
Yeah.
didn't fall back; I fall forward, and
Yeah.
it's something you really want to know. You want to, and especially as a student, you want to make sure things align with your schedule. See, having a job, it can either be part time or full time. You want to make sure, do you want it to be part time? Do you want it to be full time? Um, if the workplace that you're applying to only wants full time and you have so many other things like classes, internships, and shadowing, truth is it might not be a good choice. It might not be a good decision to make. What time? How many hours? What time of the day? There's classes coming in the mix as well. There's so many different things, moving parts that you want to make sure it aligns right. You have time for relaxation, time for other priorities as well,
Sure.
and make sure you love what you do. Make sure you have a passion for it. It's always key. If you have a passion and love what you do, you'll persevere. You really persevere. Those tough times, you'll go through it. You'll
Right.
work hard, and you'll persevere through those tough times if you really um, love what you do. If you have passion, because
Right. And
that's really
sometimes you don't know what you love until you try out different things and know yourself. I mean, when you're first starting off, how frequent do people have a job based on what their parents thought they should do? But
100%.
really, it wasn't what they truly believed they wanted to do. But maybe you didn't realize that as a young adult. But it takes experience, it takes knowing your strengths, yourself, where you work best, knowing all of those tools to help you stay focused on top of it. And are you someone who can work for someone else, or are you someone who needs to be in charge and then possibly be the one leading a team?
100%. It's kind of like trial and error. And remember, when you fall, you're falling forward, not backwards.